Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody feeling, considering it's 1 o'clock and almost lunchtime? So, hopefully by the end of our presentation today, Rachel and I would have given you some food for thought on what to expect in the communications industry for 2020. Between the two of us, we've got, what, nearly 35 years of experience?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah.
Showing our age.
Yeah, that's true. Things have most definitely changed, and we've all heard it today. I remember back in the day, in the early 2000s, we actually used to distribute press releases by fax.
And now we're pitching stories to media via WhatsApp. So whilst the comms industry has kind of evolved and fragmented, I think what's really clear is that we feel the world has never needed strategic communications as much as it does today. So I'm going to talk for 20 minutes about Brexit. Is that all right with everyone? Yeah? Okay, so we've had Brexit, Trumpism, the recent protests in Hong Kong. What we're seeing is that kind of political unrest is really dominating conversations, our news feeds, and the headlines. In fact, a recent study of Gen Zers said that 75% of them said that being politically engaged was really important to their identity. And these are kind of young people across North America, Asia, and also in Europe. But it's not just Gen Z. Employee activism in general is really on the rise in this age of purpose. A study said that 4 in 10 Americans said that they have spoken up to either support or criticize their own employers when talking about issues that impact society. And it's also had a regional impact. There was a really high-profile example of Google when the Trump administration came into power and Trump administered the ban, a temporary travel ban. And that really impacted a lot of Google's employees from the Middle East, and they took a stand and really kind of brought a legal case together. And of course now we're seeing, around 3/4 of the population have access to a mobile phone or a device. And what that means is that it's never been easier to share opinions and support causes in the public space. And this has a real kind of potential to spark huge movements in a matter of minutes. And whilst this can be a power for good, and we've seen great examples of that, it can also share and spark kind of misrepresentation, rumour, negative sentiment, and that can really kind of spread like wildfire. And we've seen a lot of companies in real kind of hot water in 2019, and they've had to kind of really grapple with reputational issues and threats, and that's something that we think we'll continue to see in 2020. So I think the question we're here to ask ourselves is, how can brands globally and very much here in the region continue to kind of build and manage their reputations and earn that all-important advocacy in such a fragmented world?
Do you agree that the region is a topic of interest for media and audiences worldwide? Yeah. The region has been making headlines for quite some time now, and it's not about to change. So I wanted to take a look at what's happening in the region right now. So more than ever, all eyes are on us. Not going to change. Let's take a look, for example, at what's happening in Lebanon. If you take out your phones right now and you Google Lebanon baby shark, this is what you'll get. Does anyone know the story about the video? About the mom who was stuck in traffic during the protests with her child, and a group of protesters decided to sing to him, Baby Shark. That video was captured by a citizen journalist, and it was shared on WhatsApp. And by the time the woman made it home, her husband had already received it multiple times. And then it got picked up by CNN, BBC, Inside Edition, and even talk shows like Trevor Noah. So isn't it amazing that such human stories like this are narrated and originate from this part of the world and make it onto global audiences? If we zero in a little bit closer and take a look at what's happening in KSA. So just like a business, with new management comes new changes. And so and Mustafa, thank you for shedding light on this. There's been major reform, economic, social, tourism, cultural, and the likes of the Wall Street Journal are picking it up and talking about it. Now, sadly, KSA is still going to be making headlines, and sometimes it's going to be negative because the cynicism there still exists. If we take a look at what's happening over here at home, We know that this is due to our geographic location. There's a lot of stories that originate out of this country, and with the events that we also host, like Expo 2020 coming up, all eyes are most definitely going to be on us as we host different nations from all over the world. And what about the announcement that the UAE leadership made just last week, where they were on the lookout for one brand that would unite us? One brand that, according to Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, would narrate our story and journey of development to the rest of the world. So, like I said earlier, we're still going to continue making headlines. We're still going to be a topic of interest for everybody. And we do have a lot of stories to tell. It's just a matter of how, when, where, and why.
But it's not just about stories. We believe that in 2020 we have a real opportunity to reframe communications as a solution to more than just kind of generating awareness around a product or profiling the CEO. Whilst these will still continue to be kind of tactics in our PR toolbox, strategic communications has proven time and time again that it can do a lot more than just kind of garnering attention. It can also impact the bottom line and even drive societal change. But with this comes a really big responsibility, right? If we're going to drive business and behavioural outcomes, we need a seat at the table much earlier. And it also means that we need to shake off as an industry these perceptions as kind of the fixers that are brought in at the 11th hour. But there's no silver bullet, Yes, we're seeing in the region a shift in communications, the perceptions around communications. But it's going to take some time. But we think there's an opportunity for us to really kind of work together to start elevating the role of comms, because we feel that communications has a real opportunity to provide, to make a profound and positive impact on the wider region.
So let's look at some trends. Tahab, I'm going to steal two of the words that you mentioned earlier, and probably two words that we are quite familiar with as an industry. Brand purpose typically is something that is articulated through a brand campaign. Historically, in communications, it's often thought of as some form of CSR. So let's go plant a tree. Let's go donate a check. Let's go visit some children in a pediatric ward.
Write a press release on it.
Write a press release, as Tariq McNass would say. But increasingly, we're starting to see that brand purpose is trickling throughout the Marcomms disciplines. And it's going and has to go beyond your typical press release and spokespeople interviews. Pull up a few examples here. I don't have any fancy videos like the other speakers. Unilever has a digital content platform that has absolutely nothing to do with any of the products that it sells. It's a platform that is run by Arab women that tackles issues that we face as Arab women, and it is run and targeting Arab women. It has nothing to do with the products that Unilever sells. So that's your brand purpose there. If you look at Nike, the world went wild. At a time when we are, as a region, and with Islam and sometimes the hatred that comes around with it, when a global giant went and created and marketed a product aimed at that audience, the world went nuts. Look at another controversy. Everyone's here, I thought that I would hear it more than once today about the Colin Kaepernick ad, the Dream Crazy ad. So with a global giant like Nike sticking to its guns, sticking to its brand purpose, tackling social issues, and with, partnering with people that are like-minded just like it, who would have thought that the Dream Crazy ad would earn Nike over $160 million in earned media coverage, our bread and butter, but also a 33% boost in sales. So in 2020, comms needs to not just articulate the brand purpose, but we need to be part of the ideation, development, and then the actual communication of the purpose.
Trend number 2. People, people, people. Disclaimer, we're talking about talent. Everyone talks about talent. But you know what? I'm not going to make any apologies for that. Because as human beings, we're born with this innate need for human connection. And we talk about the Internet of Things and technology and automation, and these are all fantastic, but as kind of various other professionals have said this morning, it's not about either or, and human beings and people will continue to be absolutely vital to the communications industry in 2020. And as we start to sort of see this shift in the perception around communications and us kind of being tasked with this role of kind of delivering on business outcomes, we as a comms industry need to really kind of expand and upskill our talent pool in a way that really we haven't done since the rise of social media. We need to look further afield. We need to look at not just the technical skills, but also the behaviours and some of those softer skills to really kind of meet that growing demand for business solutions. So what are we seeing? Well, a couple of things. In-house comms teams are kind of evolving. In some instances, they've been kind of bringing in almost kind of mini agencies, looking at bringing in kind of in-house content specialists, data and analytics, influencer relations specialists. Client of ours, MasterCard, are bringing their Story Lab content hub to the region, which is the first time they've launched it outside of the US. So they're going to be able to sort of very quickly and efficiently create content that can then be shared across paid, owned, and channels. And it's something that, you know, they're going to be sort of working with agency partners to sort of really see how they can collaborate. Agencies, you know, we've been doing this for a while, looking at our structure, seeing how we can kind of bring in talent from other disciplines, whether it's content strategists, creative planners, subject matter experts, to really sort of meet that growing demand for data-driven insights and programs. But it's not just technical skills. I mentioned the soft skills before. You know, we need skilled communicators, negotiators, people with the emotional intelligence, with the empathy to really be able to kind of deliver that deep collaboration that's required that will lead to those solutions delivering the business outcomes. And we need tools, you know, tools, project management tools, collaboration tools, traffic management tools. So you'll see more and more companies within the comms space kind of investing in tools, technologies, automation to really be able to kind of improve efficiencies and increase the output and meet that huge volume of content that we need to be producing next year, and of course to meet the ever-growing demands of deadlines that we're facing. And finally, from a kind of people perspective, we're seeing flexibility. So flexibility in terms of working arrangements, in terms of working hours, in terms of flexible working environments, something very close to my heart as someone who does 4 days a week, and you know, I've got kids and kind of balancing everything else. Also kind of more use of on-demand talent, you know, freelancers, part-time resource, specialist capabilities being kind of parachuted in, who can be kind of dialed up and dialed down depending on what the nature of the campaign requires. And all of these things are going to really sort of benefit not only the individuals but also the companies and the efficiencies with which they operate.
Thank you. In 1970s, your average human would be exposed to approximately, on average, 500 marketing messages a day. The number today is 5,000 plus. So at a time when our audiences are on the go, they have long commutes, we're much more impatient, and we all as marketers are much more competitive, we need to win people's trust. So how do we do that? How do we create that cut-through in order for them to take attention to us, but then also to put their trust in us? And more importantly, how do we make money out of that? How do we convert that into profit leads? So there's 3 ways that we can do that and that we should try to do in 2020. The first one is weaving the values into your communications from the get-go. So typically it's something that you know, an entity would have and put it up on the wall and people would forget about it. But from a communications perspective, we need to find ways to distinguish and incorporate it into our content, partnership, sponsorship, as well as our CSR strategies. So it's completely weaved through from the top down. Second of all, people can read through our bullshit. Excuse my French. We need to be able to communicate with absolute full transparency. So back in the day, as communication consultants, we would consult our brands, our clients, that you need to be communicating with full transparency at times of crisis. So now people are a lot smarter and can read through the sugarcoating, and they require transparent communications on a day-to-day and not just in times of crisis. And just building on Rachel's point as well, because it fits in very nicely over here, is when it comes to teams, when it comes to people, we need to be able to design teams that are cohesive, and every team needs to understand what is required of them and what they need to do and what each discipline is doing as well.
Okay, trend number 4. Couldn't talk about communications without touching upon measurement. But I think, the thing that we're starting to see is this idea of kind of correlating communications with business outcomes. Surely if we're sort of looking at communications playing a role in delivering on the bottom line, we're going to have sort of this much more sophisticated measurement tools that will really directly link comms to sales, right? Well, not quite. We've got quite a long way to go. And I think even globally, we have a long way to go to really kind of develop a much more sophisticated and robust way of measuring communications. We've been pretty archaic globally and here in the region from moving away from these kind of arbitrary metrics around AVE, these quantitative metrics, PR value, reach. All of these things need to be kind of completely overhauled if we're going to sort of have a seat at the table and play, an important role in impacting businesses. But there are some green shoots of hope that we've started seeing this year and that we think will continue into 2020. So, we have more access to data to be able to kind of assess the impact of exposure. There are a lot of tech solutions now kind of paving the way to really be able to sort of look at the qualitative nature and impact of media coverage. So, media research giant Karma is looking at things like semantic engines that will kind of really elevate that ability to pull out key messages and some of those reputational drivers within media coverage. Cloud computing means that we have access to much larger data sets that look at kind of content and conversations across multiple channels. And these can be kind of hosted and mined much, much cheaper and more effectively than ever before. And lastly, kind of project management, I guess, methodologies and frameworks. So going back to kind of looking at things like balanced scorecard, really sort of starting from the outset and looking at what are those business objectives we're trying to achieve, and how do we develop a campaign that really allows us to achieve those, and most importantly, to be able to measure them through kind of tools like dashboards where you're able to kind of move through and away from some of those traditional kind of comms metrics around kind of coverage output, really into kind of marketing metrics. So looking at, how comms is impacting brand reputation and brand index through to the holy grail, which is obviously some of those business metrics, whether it be sales, footfall, etc.
Did you know that the human attention span today is 1 second shorter than that of your typical goldfish? Isn't that hilarious? And did you know that for every 10 people that read an article, only 8 will read the headline, and only 2 will actually make it down to the article. So like I said earlier, audiences are a lot more impatient, and they want to get tomorrow's news now, not tomorrow's news today. So in 2020, we're going to need to get a lot more creative in order for us to adapt to this changing landscape of ours. So there's 3 things that we're seeing a rise in for 2020, and even now, actually. Traditionally, a press kit would have consisted of a press release and some B-roll or some kind of video footage. But these days, we are consulting our clients and our brands to invest in digital audio. Just the other day, we developed a 40-page annual report, and the client came back to us and said, I need it as a 2-minute animation video that I can send by WhatsApp to the Sheikha. That's nuts. We need to be investing in things like this. We need to be looking at podcasts. We need to be looking at sound bites. We need to be doing more GIFs. We need to be doing more WhatsAppable content as well. The second thing, it's not new, but there is a linkage here, is that slowly print is dying. Sorry, Austin and team. But that presents an opportunity for publishing houses. They're investing a lot more in their digital channels, and that means also, again, going back to the talent side, it means that they are investing a lot more in digital specialists. So I'll give you one quick example. Al Bayan newspaper realizes that the readership is, dwindling, and so they went and they invested in an entire team for @shoofalbayantv.com or @shoofalbayan. So we need to create and invest in, or specifically curate content specifically for these digital channels. And the third one, before our time runs out, oh crap, is that Arabic content is becoming a lot more popular, and it's presenting opportunities or partnership and brand integration opportunities for clients. And you can take a look at what Netflix is doing in the region as well. So global brands are attracting local brands over here as well. So in short, what do we need to do for 2020? We don't just communicate a purpose, but we need to be part of developing it from the scratch.
We need to really invest in both the people with the technical skills and also the behavioural skills, and the tools that foster that real kind of deep collaboration needed to develop business solutions.
Live, breathe, and communicate your brand values, and be bold, and don't be afraid of controversy.
All of us committing to adopting a new KPI framework and throwing out these kind of arbitrary quantitative metrics and moving towards measuring outcomes and impact.
And lastly, get bold with not only packaging your content, but also the distribution of your content as well. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.